Welcome to Life on Life Discipleship with Josiah Jones. This is a space where faith gets real. We're all about authentic discipleship, encouraging conversations and practical ways to live out your faith every day. No fluff, no cliches, just real talk about following Jesus and building others. Let's do this.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Life on Life podcast. I'm joined in the studio today with JD, John David Rogers.
Can't get rid of me.
Come
I'm
on.
back. I'm still here.
Hey, I'm really excited about this episode because this is the practicals of Life on Life. How do we make disciples is the question that's on the table today. And so what would you say to that, just coming out of the gates? How do you make disciples?
What would you say to that?
Are you going to put it back in my court?
Yeah, what you go first.
Well, I mean,
for the record, after last episode, he told me I talked too much.
Oh, gosh.
So go ahead. How would you start this conversation?
Let me just be kind real quick, okay? I'm nothing but kind to you. When you talk, you have wisdom that comes out of your mouth.
Right.
So I have nothing but good things to say with everything you've said so far. I think you got to go back to the definition. That's what I would say. So let me just start there. What?
I'm trying to remember it. You've said it a couple of times.
Know? I need this branded
I'm trying
on your heart
to remember.
Okay, here we go.
The shuns. I remember that.
Oh, gosh.
TION.
So the way that we have defined discipleship at Armada is this: radical self-donation for the purpose of godliness and multiplication.
Yes.
So what is radical self-donation? It's donating your life from one person to the other, not just donating a bunch of knowledge from one person to another. And so I think when we've looked at discipleship historically across ministries, across generations, it's been pretty Bible saturated, which it needs to be, but it hasn't moved past that. I mean, so many people don't just need to know more verses. They don't just need to know more theology. I always say we have more truth when we can obey. Many of us need to know less and do more instead of knowing more and doing less. And so people need to see the Bible played out. And that's why I think in 1 Thess 2:8 it says they loved him so much that they not only shared the gospel with them, but they shared their very own life. Because you move past theological discussions, doctrinal discussions, to now seeing theology in the flesh. And so, you know, the way that I think disciples are made, or how we make disciples, has to be, we have to incorporate our life into those that we're discipling for the purpose of godliness, 1 Peter 1:16, and multiplication, 2 Timothy 2:2.
So you just use scripture to formulate that definition.
Yeah.
But then you're saying that simply studying scripture isn't like the end all be all of discipleship. So what would you say of like, I thought studying scripture together was discipleship. Why?
It's yes and yes. It's both and. It's got to be you, giving them the truth week in and week out, but they need to see the truth lived out.
So what would you say to the person's like, no, Josiah, like your life can't save someone, and how you do things and telling people to come along with you, like there's no power in that. There's power in the scriptures. And so you need to be just memorizing, doing a Bible study, getting deep into theology. Like, why is that not enough?
Because if all we needed was knowledge, then we wouldn't have a discipleship problem across ministries. I think there's so much knowledge at our disposal. And I'm not saying people don't need to know doctrine and know theology, but at the end of the day, it's not information that equals transformation, right? I mean, now we have ChatGPT. I mean, we can find a lot of different things, and I'm not saying that that's always a credible source. Gotquestions.org is better, but we have a lot of knowledge out there. It's knowledge plus application equals transformation. And so watching somebody live their life, watching someone live out the gospel with their life is powerful. That's why when Jesus said, "Come and follow me," he was saying, "Come watch me do what I do. Come watch me teach," which we do a lot of that every Sunday. Today's Saturday. We're going to go to church tomorrow, and we're going to be exposed to the Word of God and the people of God. and in a 4-wall building, right? And they're going to probably give a really good message.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a great sermon. But how many of us listen to message after message, sing songs after songs, and then our life really isn't changed? And so I think we're lacking a model that we haven't tapped into for a long time. And I believe the last time we truly tapped into this model was the last great awakening that we had, was the Jesus movement. You remember the hippie movement? Remember, have you seen Jesus Revolution?
I have.
Dude, that was awesome. Like a guy named Chuck Smith and Greg Laurie and even Billy Graham, with the revivals of 1970s, 1980s. Like, dude, it sparked a movement of communal living.
Mm-hmm.
And even intergenerations coming together. I love that scene in the Jesus Revolution where you have these staunch religious people in church,
mm-hmm.
and they're not wanting to open their doors to
mm-hmm.
the next generation. And then what happens? You remember what happens like later on in the movie?
Yeah, they all come in and start doing music differently. And
right, but not only that, the older people are opening their homes and their lives to the younger
mm-hmm.
people. Like, we've just gotten away from that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just proposing, what would it look like if we could bring that back? Not just in the 4 walls of the church, not just on Sunday mornings or Wednesday nights, or not just with our programs. I think programs and systems that we have in the churches are good. I'm not against that. I'm not anti-program. But I am saying, what do we need to do to move past just the program? The program can be a bridge to meet people and to help people in Bible studies and, recovery, ministries like Regen and others, CRT.
so
I'm
right?
I'm a CRT, Celebrate, Recovery.
Yeah.
CR.
So I'm a single young adult in Dallas. I work a normal 9 to 5. I go to church on Sundays, go to the porch on Tuesdays. How do I feel like you're saying life on life, but like when I look at my life kind of like depresses me personally. So like, why would I tell someone, come join me in my life when, like, if I'm being honest, like I wish I was married. I wish I was doing a different job. Like I don't really feel very purposeful. So why would I want someone to join me in this very mundane life?
You probably don't need anyone to join you. You probably need to join someone that's ready to disciple you, right? You've probably never seen it modeled. I mean, we talked on the very first episode about a discipleship ministry that we started called Armada. And I've sat down with almost 60 men in the last 6 weeks. And I've just asked them, hey, have you ever been discipled? And most of them have said no. And then even the next question, if they've never been discipled, have you ever made disciples? And what do you think the answer is to that?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, because
so would you say if someone hasn't been discipled, because right now we're talking about how to make disciples,
mm-hmm.
if you haven't been discipled, should you go out and try to start?
Not at all.
So it's almost like the podcast, I feel like, should take a step back then and almost have like
the first part of this podcast can be, hey, if you've never truly been discipled in the way that we're talking about, maybe it's only been through a Bible study, and that, I'm not saying that's not a part of your discipleship journey, right? Or you've gone to a program like Celebrate Recovery or Regen or Men's Summit or whatever the name of the program is that's helping you be more of God's man or God's woman. I'm saying take that and look for someone in the church that isn't just going to give you the material, but they're going to give you their life.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what we need. We need more of that. And if you don't know where to start, ask your pastor, ask someone on staff, ask someone, what would it look like for me to get back to the Jesus model, where he took 12 men, and even in those 12 men, he had 3 of his closest men, Peter, James, and John. Mm-hmm. And he didn't just teach them, he lived life with them. He invited them into what they were already doing.
Okay, so I want to give you an honest thought.
Yeah.
With that, like, I'm not saying this is valid. I'm not saying this is indicative of every church, but a worry I have and goes back to everything we've been talking about in this season. If someone heard you and then walks up to their pastor or the first person they see at their church and they say, I want to be discipled, will you plug me like somewhere where an older man will disciple me? I feel like, as someone who was once behind the scenes, and this is everything we've been talking about, I'm wondering right now, could I trust every church to handle that situation well? Like, are they going to actually give them what they're asking for and what we're pushing them towards? Someone who's going to offer that kind of life-on-life mentorship and discipleship. I'm not talking about spending every waking moment with them. I'm not talking about rearranging their schedule, but actually multiplying and pouring into their life. Or
maybe rearranging their schedule.
Or maybe. Or are they going to say, I'm glad you asked. If you'll scan that QR code, you'll go to, in 3 weeks, we have our first new connect point, and now it's 3 weeks away. And let's say this person's like, no, I need this now. I'm down, or I'm whatever. And it's like, can you give me, there's the next person in line waiting to talk to me, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, can y'all talk to them? So now they get past, and then let's just say, hypothetically, like they go, okay, and then aren't they probably going to get connected then to someone in the same season as them with the current, most churches, like they're going to get put into a small group, right? They're not going to get put into a discipleship that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So what do they?
What do they do?
What do they do, and what do they do?
That's a great question. Email J Jones at armadadiscipleship.org.
I think
again, this is I'm not saying it's revolutionary.
But do you think pastors or anyone, let's just say a ministry person heard that, do you think they're hearing this and going, that's a problem? Or do you think they're going, no, connecting group is an amazing solution. Like, small group is the solution. What's wrong with that?
Yeah. I'm a huge component of community groups, small groups, D groups, whatever you want to call it.
I know.
Right?
But we're talking about the church being their solution to the issue of never being discipled by someone who's gone before them.
Exactly. So I would say lead up with them. If they're just going to point you to a same life stage community group or small group, just say, no, that's not really what I'm looking for. I even don't want a group of 8 people. I want a smaller group of maybe 4 or 5, and a guy that's way further along than me in their faith that can pour into me, not just with knowledge, but with their life. And is that possible? Does that seem so foreign to them? Like, I would ask them, does that seem so foreign? Why is that foreign? What do you think 1 Thessalonians 2:8 says? Like, what do you think that means? And I think I would just challenge in the most respectful way. Just like I'm having meetings every week with different pastors in DFW, challenging their thought process when it comes to discipleship.
What's so interesting, though, is I feel like the reason why they're like, I wonder if they're starting to think, if this happened, do I have enough older men who are discipled to be able and equipped to biblically lead these men?
This is why you can't size and scale it.
Okay, and then
maybe you can, maybe you can't.
Let's say you're at this moment where you're like, I can't do that because I don't have enough who are willing and able. Well, then it's probably because they weren't discipled. Like, it's not built into the culture. So you got to start it somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, it's got to just start somewhere, or it's never going to start. Like, someone's got to go first and say, okay, I'm going to then train. If you are they got to get before the church. I'm going to get really practical. If you're a pastor and this is doing something to you and you're like, I think that's an issue. That's how I came to know Christ. Like, remember the old days where older men did this? Like, what happened? Like, what did happen? I would say I would get before the church and go, hey, we are going to train all men from 40 to 70 on how to make disciples. If you've never grabbed some guys and done this, we want you to join us for this training. It'll be 4 weeks long. Then let's say that happens. Mm-hmm. Now, every guy, hopefully, there's a synergy around that, a desire around that. And if there's not, I think you have to ask yourself then, what are we creating here? Like, why isn't there? what do people think they're coming here to do? What are they coming here for?
Mm-hmm.
And it just sounds like we're not really pushing people to do like, this is what you have to do. It's more just like get in the wrestle.
Yeah.
Like get in the questions and just try to discern like, man, if this is part of God's heart and his desire for men and women, multi-generations, all that stuff, are we creating the systems in place for that to take place here?
My question for that, and it's not a bad next step for a pastor listening, but the 40 to 70-year-olds, is that enough? Is a training, and we're going to train them all up in one day. Is that enough? Are they going to have a adequate picture of what discipleship looks like through the way we just defined it?
Mm-hmm.
Just going to a one-day training.
I said 4.
Or okay, you said 4. Okay,
I said 4
trainings.
weeks.
Yeah, but 4 weeks. That's great.
Let's say it's
But even
decide.
go for it. That's a way to size and scale. I'm just saying, why not just beta test this? I think some pastors are so skeptical, and I'm like, well, just start with you, like the men that have maybe sat in church for a long time and have a lot of knowledge. Train them up, maybe not to how to share the gospel and things like that, but how can you truly open your life up to a group of 4 or 5 men, and then just see what happens. Remember the last episode I was sharing about just multiplication? Mm-hmm. Like the multiplication factor, it will spread out to your whole church at some point. But I would go smaller. I mean, the way Armada was started was 5 guys that I invested my life into. They all looked around at their circles of influence and men that had been walking with the Lord for some time, and they called those guys into a living room and said, guys, can we just be honest? We're not making disciples.
Mm-hmm.
We're not making disciples when it comes to, the way Jesus did it. We've gone to a lot of Bible studies, and that has been a part of our discipleship journey. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that we're not God's men or we're not saved, none of that. But there's so many people wanting mentorship, wanting this type of connection.
Being known.
So what would it look like if we just took, I think they gathered around 40 men, 30 men. What would it look like if we just looked for the people that we influence every day, whether it's workplaces or even at our churches that we go to, and we just said, hey, 2 or 3 people. Mm-hmm. And we just started pouring into them this way.
Yeah. That's
going to spread at some point.
Yeah.
And I think, quality is better than quantity. I think we, in the church world, we just want quantity. It looks good on a, dry erase board. It looks good on a piece of paper that we can submit to our boss, our direct reports. But at the end of the day, how many people are truly being discipled? Mm-hmm. And I would start with a smaller group of people.
Mm-hmm.
That way you can manage it and quality control, making sure the groups are really walking out. Sometimes we launch big initiatives, hundreds or thousands of people join, and then by the end of it, it's like, how many people are left?
Yeah,
and people are falling away. People are falling off the wagon, and they never really complete.
I think what people have to accept about this way is it's just slow. Like it's slow, and I think we don't like slow. I think we don't like mundane. Showing up week in, week out, day in, day out. It's just not, it's not sexy. It's not like the cool conference vibes.
Yeah.
And it's just so different, but I think it's providing what people actually want.
Yeah.
And so, okay.
And I think it could be even more impactful than the large gatherings.
Yeah.
And I still think you need the large gatherings.
Yeah, it's both. Yeah. So let's say perfect scenario, they've been discipled now. They're ready to make a disciple. Where the definition, understanding that, what's next?
Look at your circles of influence.
Mm-hmm.
And where do you already have equity with people? Your jobs, churches, the places that you hang out. I used to be on a softball team, right? And so I was building influence there. And
I bet you were just loving those days. I bet you were just
beer league softball, man.
Oh my gosh!
I didn't drink beer when I played.
Did you have a cutoff shirt? You did.
I definitely had a cutoff shirt.
Yeah, I can
right?
see it. Did you do tell me.
Oh yeah. I mean, I wore my baseball pants. I didn't wear shorts.
You wore baseball pants?
You dang right. I was that guy.
Was it church league or?
Church league. No. Beer league. I played both. Church league and beer league.
And you wore real baseball pants?
Yeah, and I played tournament style.
Guys like you, I had a problem with. I did.
Wow.
I did.
I'm
when
offended.
You walked, that's okay. When you walked
You're
on
taking shots now.
No,
Well,
when
let's
you
talk
walked,
about, hey, someone pull up the band pics.
When you walked on the field, I'd be like, "There's always that guy." There's always, and he went. You probably went so hard.
Bro, you were the drummer on the drum line.
What is that?
Let's just pull up pics of you
let's have to do with
Stephen F.
anything.
Austin, because we all know those guys.
I'm just
those
saying,
guys.
No, I'm just saying it's so. I can just imagine you. Like the guys that at the softball league are doing warm up, like the throws. And it's like, come on, it's church softball.
All right, getting back to our circles of influence. So just
you were
look around.
You were influential at church softball.
I'm not saying it was a hard audience.
I know. I bet you actually were. I'm not kidding.
Even as someone in ministry, you have to look at, I'll call them outlets. Get out of the Christian circles, because
yes.
you got to put yourself.
I'm passionate about this topic.
Another episode, but you got to put yourself in places where you can meet unbelievers, where it leads to gospel conversations. And so, man, a lot of my discipleship groups have come from me just out sharing the gospel with guys that lead to coffees and, lunches. And before you know it, I'm inviting them in, which would be the next step. You invite them in to a discipleship relationship. And it's as simple as, hey, I'm thinking about starting a discipleship group.
Can I ask a question?
That feels foreign to a lot of people.
Yeah, can I ask a question? So
yeah,
you kind of skipped over quickly, like presenting the gospel. Do you feel like there's ever a world where maybe a person isn't saved yet, but they're in kind of this discipleship relationship?
1,000%. That's Jesus. You think every disciple that he called had made a commitment to follow him? No.
Okay.
Or they made a commitment to follow him physically.
Yeah.
Did they make a commitment to follow him spiritually? Where they're like, he is the Son of God.
Yeah, they were figuring it out as they went.
Yeah. The kingdom of God is upon us. He's God in the flesh. No, they didn't know that.
Yeah, they were figuring it out.
Right. And so for sure.
So you're saying, I want to say there's a difference in evangelism and discipleship.
Yeah.
But I do think they're also beautifully partnered.
There's overlap.
Yeah, like sometimes I've walked with guys. Oh, it's like patience is they really, really just sometimes I'm like, JD, he left the 99 for you. You got to stay with the one, man. Like that's the one that keeps.
But here's what I would say. If you have someone examining the faith, put them in a group with someone that maybe have just committed their life to Christ or have only been following Jesus for 2 years, because you want them to see commitment.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think commitment breeds commitment. So if you just got a bunch of guys that are examining the faith, they might be committed or they might be pretty flippant with their commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a blend sometimes. Right now, my discipleship group, they're all in. They've already made commitment. They're saved, best of my ability, me knowing, only God knows. But they're producing fruit, and yeah, they're all in. But sometimes I'll invite a guy who I just shared the gospel with, and I'll put him with a guy that's already committed his life to Christ. He's been following Jesus for a couple of years, and I think that just breeds more commitment for the group, because we all have bad moments, right? Where we're like walking with people and getting stood up. We're at the coffee shop at 6 a.m. Where's my guy?
Oh my gosh, yes. They don't show up.
Yeah, they don't show up.
Sorry, bro. I was out.
I overslept
with this girl.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm so tired.
That's a part of it. But I want to make sure, our time is short, right? Psalm 90:12 says, teach me to number my days so I may gain a heart and wisdom. So I'm constantly saying, hey, how can I make the most of my time? And so, man, I want to bring guys in, whether they're skeptics, examining the evidence of Christ, or they're all in. But I think it's a great hodgepodge. It's a great kind of a melting pot of a group to have multiple places of where they are in their faith. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Can I go off script about this for a second?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's this time I was invited. So actually the guy, too much information. Okay. A guy I had walked with, I became one of his groomsmen. He was pretty new to his faith, and all of his high school friends, they were not there. They're just as wild. Honestly, they're now picking on him for becoming a Christian, which is a real thing. They're all just miserable, though. You know, misery loves company. And so he invited me. I was a groomsman, so he's like, "Come to my bachelor party." And he's like, "I want to warn you, like they're the guys." Like, he's trying to warn me, like, you know, you're a preacher and all this stuff. And I'm like, "No, I can't wait. This is gonna be amazing." So of course I'm going with like a lens of like, just I want to love these guys and encourage him, like my friend. And we go to these casinos, and one of the guys just gets blackout. I mean, he's so drunk. He's dancing with like 70-year-old women. I'm kind of walking with him, you know, keeping up with him. He gets kicked out. Public intoxication.
So now you become his designated driver.
So he tries to walk to the casino next door. And I'm like, "Come here, you." I put his arm around me and I walk him to the Suburban, the van or whatever. We get in and I give him some water. And I'm like, "What are you doing with your life?" And we just start going in. He starts to sober up. You know, he's like, it's crazy. I'm watching him like, kind of like, wow, I think he's there. And he just starts to break. And another guy comes and joins. Long story short, that night, that guy gives his life to Christ.
Wow.
He is now a volunteer. I looked at him that night. I didn't know I wasn't going to be there, but I said, mark my words, one day you're going to be serving at the porch and you're going to be telling people this story. He's now serving at the porch.
Wow.
I say that to say, I'm not there anymore, but I like to check in on my guy because it was kind of crazy. He comes and then I find myself there. I'm gone, but I'm like, how is he being? I got to kind of check in and see how he was being discipled from afar now because it wasn't me. I kind of had to just trust him to God. He calls me the other day and he's like, "I think I'm going to get out of my group." And I'm like, "Okay, why?" And he's like, "I just feel so like they look at me sideways with some of the things I say." How sad that this is currently his only form of discipleship.
Is the community group he's in?
Yes. And I'm not saying this is again, every group, everything.
Right.
But I do think the reason why the Armada guys started it is because they were noticing probably stuff like this was happening a lot, was that no one in that moment was equipped to properly disciple that convert, like, disciple him in that moment. And instead, he felt like, I don't know if this is for me.
Yeah.
And
it just became unsafe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's scary to me.
Yeah.
That's my one friend. What if that's happening?
Which is that moment is what we're talking about. That's the discipleship.
Yeah.
And what happened? It led to him just stepping on faith and being vulnerable. And I mean, as disciplers, you and me, we know that, right? It's like we live for those moments. It's like in the church, we have to. It's a mandate. We have to equip people to know how to live for those moments. But I think that's one of the problems. And I can say it from experience, when you're in a group with just your peers, again, which I don't think is a bad thing in and of itself. But if you're only in a group with your peers and they're all kind of in the same, category of maturity, if you will, then what happens when they're not mature enough to handle a situation like that? So this guy, like we talked about in the first episode, being known is now going to lead to what? Maybe suppressing his sin, hiding. And now we've just missed out an opportunity to disciple one of the greatest moments that he could have had in a group that wasn't equipped to disciple that moment.
Yeah. And we're fooling ourselves if people can't come that way and in process, then we're not really who we're claiming to be.
That's right.
Like, that's just the reality. So I guess I say that to ask the question, like, what should have happened, I guess, and like what is the next step? And you have this person now, similar to this guy, who's like, okay, I'm in this relationship with you. This is how I want to do life on life with you. Where do I begin practically now in this person's life? Like, what do we do? Do we read the Bible? Do we?
Yeah, I mean, you know this.
I know, but I'm asking you. Maybe the person listening doesn't know.
I'm going to put it back to you, but I would say for me, I mean, it is picking a book of the Bible. Maybe it's going to the very beginning and starting with Genesis, or jump into Matthew or John and going to Romans. But at the end of the day, he needs your life and you need his life. And so integrate yourself into each other's lives, number one. And then look at what you would want your disciple to be anchored in. At Armada, we have 6 different anchors. And we just said, if a guy walks into Armada and we place him into a discipleship group and we deploy that group with a trusted leader, what do we want to be true about all the disciples that are in groups? What do we want them to be anchored in if they were to start and finish? Let's just call it a year-long discipleship journey. And so we can put the 6 anchors in the show notes, but it's simple. Like, we want them to know the gospel and be able to articulate it. We want them to understand their identity in Christ. I mean, those are just 2 out of the 6 anchors. But
can you just rip through them real quick, though? I'm just curious.
Yeah, let me pull them up real quick. We are building. Remember, I tell you, we're building Armadas. We're flying it.
Mm-hmm.
We want these anchors to be one word, or 2 words at the most. So we want them to be gospel fluent. We want them to understand it and be able to articulate it. We want them to have a Christ-based identity. And there's scripture for each one of these anchors. We want them to have the fear of God. We want them to understand what that is, the awe of God, which I'm reading a book right now, Awe of God by John Bevere.
So is Jenna.
Phenomenal. The fear of God, awe of God, and sound doctrine. That's the 3rd anchor. We want them to be spiritually disciplined, so like the spiritual disciplines, and holy, because that's what spiritual disciplines should produce. We want them to be church and mission driven, like understanding, hey, what does it look like to be part of a local church, and how do I identify my gifts and that sort of thing, and use those to be mission driven. And then lastly, we want them to multiply. Mm-hmm. We want them to multiply their life into the life of other people for the rest of their life. And so those are just 6 anchors, and we'll put those in the show notes. But we want everybody to have a target, and we want them to be able to put their crosshairs on that target if they're discipling a group. Then there's a wide fairway. Mm-hmm. So if you're discipling 4 guys, what's it to me to say, JD, you need to do this curriculum, or you need to pick this book of the Bible, when you're going to know those guys a lot better than me? And I think this is one of the secret sauces to Armada, is that we're not mandating that everybody has to go through this. We're saying, here's the 6 anchors. We want them to be anchored in these things. Now you get to determine what material you want to use. Book of the Bible, a study, a book that you want to read, whatever it is, and walk them through that over the course of a year.
What would you say to the skeptic? It's like, if you're not mandating what they do, how do you have control of how they're trained?
I love that you asked that question. This is where we integrate the older generation, the more seasoned vets, with the younger generation that are leading those groups. And when I say younger, I mean most of them are in their 30s, mm-hmm. So they've been walking with the Lord for some time. But we have 50, 60, 70-year-olds that we went after. We just came up with a list of 40 of them. I got with some other guys in that generation, just said, hey, could you give me 10 guys? And I have started to reach out to them and said, hey, would you be willing to take 2 to 4 groups? So it's between 2 and 4 leaders. Some groups have 1 leader, other groups have 2 of them. Would you be willing to disciple them? Would you be willing to oversee them? And what's really cool, bro, is they're just saying, come to my house, and we're going to have a night where grab something out of the fridge. A lot of these guys are empty nesters, so they have these empty rooms. Mm-hmm. And they're just sitting in a chair. Like, think about like old grandpa style, mm-hmm. and you just get to ask them anything. It's not even curriculum based, but they're talking theology, mm-hmm. doctrine. They're talking culture. They're talking finances, relationships, purity, all of that.
So the way you're protecting the integrity
Yes.
of what they're being discipled in is by the vetting of the discipler. Like
Yeah.
who's
Making sure we have strong leaders that can lead those discipleship groups. Usually probably a decade in between. So a 30-year-old, 30-something discipling 20-something. And that's not perfect, right? There could be an older 20s, you know, discipling younger 20s or mid-20s. That nowhere in the scripture you're going to find a book, chapter, verse that says you have to be a certain age. It's all about spiritual maturity. But the way that we're making sure that those groups are being cared for and making sure that the quality is there and that this type of discipleship, the way we've defined it over the last few episodes, isn't aspirational, but it's actually happening, is by bringing in the older generation that have been walking with God for decades, that know their Bible, that have good theology, that have been married for 40 years, that have raised kids, discipled their own children who are now having children. And man, we're scratching an itch, bro.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And these guys that are leading discipleship groups are just coming to us and saying, thank you. This is what I can't just pour out. I need to make sure I'm being poured back into. And so they meet with them at least once a month in a life on life way, where they open their home and they just get to go sit with an older guy.
That's awesome.
And man, there's so much fruit coming out of that.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
We probably should wrap up this one. I think what I'm just to kind of put, if I'm someone that's I'm curious about how to make a disciple, where to begin, it really does sound like it takes intentionality and it takes like intentional conversations. Like you can't kind of fall into it.
No.
And I think that's where a lot of guys probably really struggle with this, is because they view all that stuff as really awkward. Like guys love to just fall into friendships. They're like, yeah, bro and I started like streaming together and gaming, and then now like he's my bro. Like we just kind of, I don't really know much about him, but he's my bro. Yeah. That's kind of it. And it's like, this requires like a DTR with your friend and being like, I want to define this. I want to be intentional. I want to have a plan, which that plan looks like the 6 anchors that you discussed. And hey, if we do this right, by the end of it, here's what the outcome should look like. And then that is, you kind of get to, there's a playground where you get to determine how those 6 things operate. What book of the Bible, what book as a supplemental resource do you want to go through? Praying for each other, hanging out, all the things.
Life on life, yeah.
And then to cap it, it's making sure that you're also, though, being invested in and seeking that as well. And so it's just this beautiful cycle happening and multiplication happening as a result.
So if someone's sitting here listening and they've never been discipled this way, here's my charge for you. Look around in your church and don't be intimidated by an older guy that you've maybe met on a Sunday, or a ministry night that you're happen to be up at the church, or you just know that this guy's godly. Just go up to him and say, hey, can I grab coffee? Can I buy you a coffee? Can I buy a lunch? And could I take you out and just ask you questions when it comes to faith, culture, that sort of thing? And then ask the bold question, would you consider discipling me? Would you consider investing your life into me? And for those people that they think they're ready to disciple, the same is true. Like we talked about, look at your circles of influence. Be intentional, not just sharing the gospel, but look at the people that are hungry for more, that are trying to live holy lives, that are in a place of wanting to follow Christ more. Like, man, call them into a relationship and define it, like you said. And before you know it, bro, you're going to find yourself on this side where we're like, man, this is the good life.
Yeah.
This is the best side to be on. And, if you're in full-time ministry, run after this.
Yeah.
And always have a group of men or always have a group of women that you're investing in for an extended period of time. And your heart's not going to get detached from the ministry.
Yeah. Can I end with a quick story?
Please do.
When I was in college, me and my best friend who I've referred to, the one that started the Bible study together, we were late for a church service and we walked in our second pew. We walk in, sit down, And after the service, this couple from the church, beautiful, probably like they were recently like, I'll say they're in their late 40s. Let's say that. And they walk up to us and say, "You don't know us. We're Brett and Christy. We want you two to come out to our house for dinner." We're like, this is so weird, but okay. Like, we're college kids, like free meal.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay. So she's like, "Brett, get their number." And the husband gets our numbers, and they bring us out, and we drove out. It was like 30-minute drive, like to the middle of nowhere. And we're like, we came up with like a safe word, like, "Hey, if things get weird, like you fake a stomach ache and I'll say we have to go." And like, I remember we were so like awkward and nervous about this dinner and being in their home. It was like weird, right? It's so sad, it's just sad. And so we walk in, and we ended up staying there till 3 a.m. on a school night. And they just dove in, and she told us that she was sitting in church and she had just sent her firstborn son to A&M, and he was not following after Jesus. And she said, "God, would you just send someone who lives in College Station that's gone before him, who are godly parents, to take them in as one of their own and disciple him?" And God said, "I will do that, but I bet a mom is out there praying that someone like you would do that for their kids at SFA."
That's right.
And right when she heard that, she saw me and him walk late into church.
Wow.
And she's like, "I'm going to go." She said all she saw was the back of her head, and she's like, "We're going to go invite them over for dinner." That began a discipleship relationship that we ended up moving in with them in college, me and 4 guys. They walked with us, and to this day, in 2 months, all 5 of us, plus our wives now, plus all of our crazy kids, once a year, go back and stay with these people who are now empty nesters. But their greatest joy is seeing all of us pull in and all of these kids running to them and saying, "BB, me." I go,
wow.
They're grandparents now to them, to our kids. And they dealt with us when we were like we were dumb, single dudes in college. They were walking with us. And now look at that. Like, look at the years of investment and the richness and just the gold that is.
Yeah,
and so
that's amazing.
It really is just takes all it took. Them just picked us out of the crowd, walked up, we all come over for dinner. And then now here we are.
JD, this is why you're on the show. I mean, not just your stories, but you've bled this and you've been invited into this. And so you have just these snapshots all throughout your life. And honestly, man, like, we overthink discipleship. And so the simplicity of this podcast, I hope, my prayer after we finish is that this would just bless people to not overthink it, to just go for it, to take steps of faith and be intentional on inviting people into your life. Hey guys, what we're hoping throughout our conversation, JD and I, is that this brings awareness to maybe what's lacking within you when it comes to discipleship, or maybe what's lacking at the church that you call home at. And we want this to be an opportunity for you to maybe lead up with your pastor and just say, "Hey, where can I find this type of discipleship?" Or if they said, "Hey, we don't have anything like this," that's perfectly fine. You be a part of the change. You be the church at your local body. And if you need something immediately, or you want to come alongside of what we're doing at Armada Discipleship here in Dallas, then reach out to me directly at jjones at armadadiscipleship.org. And I will be happy to get back to you, and we can chop it up and just talk about what it looks like for discipleship in your season of life. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. Life on Life podcast.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Life on Life. If this spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, tag a friend, and keep the conversation going. Discipleship isn't a program, it's a lifestyle. So go live it out, love people well, and let's make Jesus known.